Joining me right now is Justin Jaynes, Xtreme Couture, welterweight, but usually a lightweight, right, Justin?
Yeah, my whole pro career, I've been a lightweight. I've even tried to go down and dabble with featherweight. But, I was under the impression that I was going to fight 3, 4, maybe even 5 times in a couple weeks, and making weight that many times in that amount of time was going to be tough. So, I bumped up to welterweight to make it a little easier on my body. And here I am 1 month in with 1 fight down. So.
All right, before we get into your fight at Super Fight League, I wanted to know, how did you get hooked up with Super Fight League? How did you end up in India?
A friend of mine, Carl Keller, he's originally from Michigan. I'm originally from Michigan. We trained a little bit out there, and then he moved to Dubai, and he's working in some gyms out there. He hit me up, asked me if I wanted to go to India and fight for this league, and I very, very quickly said yes, and here I am out in Mumbai, India right now.
All right, week 3, you step into the cage as a welterweight against Abdul Sami Wali. He gets DQ'd. You get the win. I know it's not the win that you wanted, but he grabbed the fence twice. Did you get a feeling that he didn't know the rules?
It's something about Sammy, that, leading up to the fight, obviously, as I said, he was a one-day change-out, but that guy's not inexperienced. Unfortunately, if you watched the fight or saw his record, on the TV, it says he was 1-0. That guy's had over 20 fights, all right? He's not inexperienced. I heard someone say, oh, he doesn't know English. I don't care if you don't know English. You know not to grab the fence. He was warned originally. Then when I picked him up with my double leg, he grabbed on with both hands. They took a point away. The third time is when he was DQ'd. If you rewatch, you see the ref give a warning. Ref takes a point away. Ref DQs him. 3 times, 1 minute grabbing the fence. Like you said, it's not how I like to win. I think I would have grinded him out on the ground anyways. But I mean, it is what it is, man. The guy's had over 20 fights. Like, don't let his 1-0, as they showed you, fool you. That guy's experienced. He knows the rules, and he broke them clean.
When you guys stepped into the cage, I think that throughout the whole season so far, there was no fight that had such a size difference. Like, it was just apparent. You couldn't not notice the difference in size. And they said that he weighed in at 186 pounds. You came in on weight 170. Did you think, like, the commission should have stepped in and maybe not let this fight go through? Of course, you were going to take the fight because you said, if you don't fight, you don't make any money.
Yes. It's one of those things, sometimes, one of my best but worst traits, my ego gets ahead of me. And I didn't give a fuck, man. I'm here to fight. And looking back, it probably wasn't the smartest decision I've ever made. But I can say that about a lot of things. That guy's a big dude. Very rarely do I ever stand across from somebody and think in my head like, damn, all right, this is about to be tough. But it is what it is. Like I said, I'm confident in my skill set, whether it's on the ground or on the feet, that I can take out a bigger man. He cracked me right out the get in about first 20 seconds. He let me feel his power, and I kind of stumbled backwards, and oh shit, we better get this to the ground. And nothing to take away from Abdul, man. He's a tough guy, big, strong, tough guy. He's gonna have a very successful career. But unfortunately, we just haven't break the rules that many times. I mean, the commission probably should have said something. I mean, they stopped Vince Murdoch's fight pretty quick. I think there should have been something said about this, but all in a day, man, I'm here to fight, and that's all there is to it.
Your fight is a prime example of why wrestling is so important, and it dictates where the fight goes. He grabbed the fence, like you said, 3 times, which meant that he did not want to go to the floor with you and get his head pounded on. Basically, he was afraid to get to the ground, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
How important is the wrestling aspect to you in your game?
I mean, I think it should be important to every martial arts game. It's a prime example of, I like to stand and exchange, but with this size difference and right out the gate, when he cracked me with that 3-2 coming down the pipe, I knew that I didn't want to stand anymore. I was just too small of a guy to take, this much bigger of a man's power. So being able to dictate whether the fight's on our feet or on the ground, I think is the most important aspect to in martial arts. I mean, say I can't take this guy down, I'm just going to get teed off on for the next 15 minutes, or if I get knocked out shorter, you know. So it's to my game, it's very crucial. It's very important. I think to any fighter's game, it needs to be. And you know, I personally don't think he had a very good game plan coming in, rushing in like that. You know, I mean, he kept me away for the first couple seconds. You know, he kept long, and then he overcommitted a couple times, and that's where I was able to get my takedowns.
What are your thoughts on the refereeing that's happened so far in the SFL?
You know, being a former ref, I've reffed a lot of fights before, and you know, they can't make the perfect call every time. Do I agree with all their calls? Absolutely not. But I don't think they're doing a bad job. I don't think that they're out to get anybody. I genuinely think that they want to keep the fighter safe. You know, do I think Vince's call was a good call? No, I don't really think it was a good call, but I don't think it was malicious. I don't think the ref was trying to screw Vince. I think that he was just honestly looking out for him, you know, especially I think if it was just the straight referee's decision, he probably wouldn't have stopped it, but the doctor was in there checking him out, and they were going back and forth. You know, I happened to be in Vince's corner for that. So, again, I think the refs are doing a good job. Last night there was another disqualification. A guy blatantly needed another guy in the back of the head or in the head while he's on the ground. I think it's a good call. I talked to the referees before, after the fight, not my fight and other fights. I mean, these guys are good dudes, man. They just want everyone to stay. Generally, I think they're doing a pretty good job overall. Look at they're doing 3 shows a week. Like, there are going to be some bad calls or calls that people don't agree with. That's just the way of the sport. You know, I mean, you can go on YouTube and look at some of the top referees, Herb Dean, Mario Yamasaki, and they have highlights. People make highlights of them making bad calls. Does that mean they're a bad ref? They're a bad ref, they'd be fired. Nobody can make the perfect call every time, and my hat's off to these guys. They're dealing with this criticism. They're doing a great job, I think, in keeping the fighters safe.
All right, I wanted to move on to training out there, you know, preparing for your fights. I've seen that you've been on the rooftop. How is rooftop training for you?
It's different, man. Like, I mean, I'm spoiled where I come from. You know, I come from Xtreme Couture, one of the top gyms in the world. Like, we have medical on staff. We have, you know, physical therapist on staff. I got a strength coach on staff. I got a grappling coach on staff. These are all different coaches I have on staff for me at any time. You know, I prepared since Christmas when I decided to come out here with those guys and just come here and, you know, go up on a rooftop with what we have. I mean, took a little while to get used to. Unfortunately, the grappling and the wrestling is almost non-existent in our training schedule right now, which I think is the most important part. So that kind of is a damper right now. But, I mean, hey, you work with what you have. You know, you don't – it kind of takes me back. You don't need a 5-star facility to get good work in. I wish we had a little more mat space so we could wrestle and grapple a little more. But, I mean, it is what it is, man. I'm not one to complain. So I'm getting my work in. I'm ready. If we make it past tonight, I'm going to go and knock someone's head off next week.
Speaking of your team back at home, Xtreme Couture, recently Robert Follis, one of the coaches, he passed away. I wanted to get your thoughts on him and what small nugget of knowledge did he pass on to you that you will always remember?
Man, me and Robert, he actually just gave me my brown belt last year. I've been grappling and working with Robert now for the last 4 or 5 years while he's been at Xtreme Couture. Actually, I really haven't even threw on a gi since, his passing. I mean, maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it just kind of, I don't know. Robert was a great guy and a great coach and always so positive and motivational, especially to me. Like, if it wasn't for him, I would have never put on a gi. About 4 years ago when I was starting off as a white belt, I hated gi. I didn't like the grips and I didn't like any of that shit, and kept on me about it, whether it's through text or face. Next thing I know, next thing I'm getting promoted to blue belt, and a purple belt, and a 4-stripe purple belt. Late last year, I got my brown belt under him. I mean, he motivated. If it wasn't for him, I would have never done that. I'd still be a white belt right now. So just one of those things that I'm going to miss of, his intensity, of always, hold yourself accountable, and he always wanted to hold myself accountable for weigh-ins, for training, for, put on a gi, just showing up. And that's probably the biggest thing I'm going to miss about him.
You've been out in India. I saw a video of you working with some kids in the street, teaching them some combinations. How has that experience been?
Man, that's the most fun I've had since I've been here, honestly. Like, I was just walking, me and Anthony Avila, the Shark, we're just kind of walking down the street and just trying to soak up the culture a little bit. And all these kids are playing barefoot on cement, man. And, these kids are tough. So we kind of just walk by and, they all, they're running up to say hi and shake our hand and just ask where we're from. And we start coming back and they asked if we want to play soccer with them. And me and Anthony both jumped into the soccer game. And let me tell you this, these kids are athletes. These kids are running circles. And I'm talking 8 years old to 16 years old. These kids are running circles around us. And, and then a couple of them asked, what do we do? And, asked about American football. And, well, we're MMA. So they kind of correlate MMA with boxing. So they think we're boxers. And and they start shadow boxing and then kind of play around with them a little bit. And I tell you what, we take 2 hours, and I would say an hour out of the day, 2-3 times a week. It means the world to these kids. And if you tell them you're going to be somewhere, you better be there, because when we showed up the next day, they were all waiting for us. And it was great, man. It's been the most fun I've had to see. I have a 9-year-old son in the U.S., and it makes you think how spoiled, our kids are. And, Anthony and I went and bought him a new soccer ball. And it was like you gave these kids $1 million, man. They were just so stoked about an $8 soccer ball. It was really exciting, man. And we're going to go back this week and, mix it up with them again. So
when Super Fight League Season 2 is over, what are you looking towards to? What are you working towards, later on in this year?
I'm just trying to sign that UFC contract, man. I'm 12-4 now with 10 finishes, 8 being in the first round. I have 5 knockouts and 4 submissions in this 1 DQ, I guess. But that's what it all comes down to. Hold on one sec. I gotta answer the door right quick. But that's what it all comes down to is came here to try to get some wins, and it hasn't really went exactly how I thought it was going to go, but I'm still here, still trucking away, and hopefully by the end of the year, I get that UFC shot. I guess I'd do Bellator as well, but I've already been there and done that. I kind of just want to check the UFC off the list and go on from there.
All right, Justin, thank you for your time.